May 22, 2011 began as just another Sunday for Joplin. By nightfall, one of America's deadliest tornadoes had crushed a third of the city, flattening hospitals, homes, even concrete and steel. With 20 minutes warning and modern building codes powerless to stop it, what happened inside Joplin's core left questions and survivors that haunt experts to this day. How did the unthinkable break through every line of defense? At 5:17 p.m., sirens howled across Joplin. The National Weather Service had spotted the telltale hook echo of a tornado on radar, and a warning flashed out over radio and television. It was a Sunday evening, families scattered at restaurants and churches, some still at the high school football field where graduation had just ended. In the city of 50,000, the warning meant only minutes to act. Most homes in Joplin, nearly 3 out of 4, had no basement, just 28% offered that underground safety. For many, the best they could do was huddle in an interior room, away from windows, hoping the walls would hold. The city's emergency management coordinator, Keith Stammer, monitored his radio as the storm intensified. Radar signatures showed rotation tightening just southwest of town. Spotters reported multiple vortices swirling, a sign the storm was growing more violent by the second. The tornado's forward speed was agonizingly slow, barely 10 miles per hour, giving the system more time to build strength and giving residents a longer, more agonizing wait as the threat crawled toward them. Routines dissolved into urgency. In neighborhoods across southern Joplin, people scrambled for shelter, some grabbing mattresses, others clutching flashlights, a few coaxing pets from backyards. At the high school field, about 150 lingered, uncertain whether to risk the drive home or take cover in concrete bathrooms. Every minute, the storm's structure grew more ominous on radar. The warning was clear. A large, dangerous tornado was imminent, likely to strike the city's edge within minutes. At 5:34 p.m., the tornado touched down near JJ Highway and West 32nd Street. It began as a half-mile wide wedge, already stronger than most twisters ever become. The clock had run out. The next phase would test every line of defense the city could muster. St. John's Regional Medical Center stood at the heart of Joplin's medical care, built with a steel and concrete frame and modern standards. When the tornado struck at 5:40 p.m., 183 patients and dozens of staff were inside. The building's core structure remained upright, but every window shattered in an instant. Wind and debris shot through the halls, hurling X-ray machines and chairs like missiles. In the chaos, nurses and doctors rushed patients into interior corridors, shielding them as best they could. But the storm's force overwhelmed the hospital's defenses. Concrete parking stops, weighing hundreds of pounds, were tossed across the lot. Steel reinforced steps cracked and shifted. The backup generators, meant to be a last line of defense, failed, leaving 5 ventilator-dependent patients without power. 6 lives were lost in the hospital that evening. The building was later condemned, a total loss despite surviving the initial blast. On Rangeline Road, the Home Depot store faced a different kind of collapse. Its tilt-up concrete walls, designed for wind speeds less than half of what hit Joplin, relied on the roof for stability. When the tornado's winds lifted the roof away, the walls lost their anchor. Panels weighing tens of thousands of pounds toppled inward in a chain reaction, crushing the front of the store. 7 people died in the collapse, trapped near the entrance. In the back, a different fate. The walls fell outward, and 28 people survived, huddled near the loading dock. At Greenbrier Nursing Home, the tornado's core delivered devastation. The roof tore free, and the building collapsed inward. 21 residents and staff died as the structure disintegrated around them. Across town, apartment complexes on Connecticut Avenue were shredded. 14 lives were lost. Wooden beams became spears, 1 2x4 punched through a concrete curb, and debris embedded itself in the few walls left standing. The failures traced back to roof-to-wall connections, window vulnerabilities, and the relentless force of airborne debris. Survivors at each site would later describe not just the storm, but the suddenness of total structural failure, a reminder that code compliance alone was not enough against EF5 winds, highlighting total structural failure. In just 38 minutes, the Joplin tornado left a trail of numbers that still stagger experts. The death toll reached 158, making it the deadliest single tornado in the United States since 1947. More than 1,150 people were injured badly enough to require hospital treatment. The scale of destruction was almost impossible to grasp. Over 7,500 residential structures damaged, with at least 3,000 homes completely destroyed or left uninhabitable. Businesses suffered too. 553 commercial buildings were hit, and whole shopping districts were flattened. Vehicles were not spared. More than 15,000 were mangled beyond recognition, some tossed blocks from where they had been parked. The economic impact set a new record. Total damage reached $2.8 billion in 2011 dollars, equivalent to about $4 billion today. Insurance companies paid out the highest claims in Missouri's history, but many losses went beyond what policies could cover. Commercial property damage alone accounted for $1.3 billion, with residential losses topping $550 million. Debris removal, infrastructure repairs, and rebuilding costs would stretch on for years. Yet, within this devastation, a critical detail stood out. More than 70% of the tornado's path saw winds rated between EF0 and EF2 on the enhanced Fujita scale. Only a narrow core experienced the full force of EF5 winds, where the most catastrophic destruction occurred. That meant most buildings in the tornado's path were struck by winds that, in theory, could be resisted with stronger connections and better design. For engineers and policymakers, this 70% factor became a turning point. It showed that tornado-resistant construction wasn't just possible, it could save lives and property on a massive scale. The numbers told a story of tragedy, but also of opportunity, a chance to rethink how communities prepare for the worst storms nature can deliver. Federal investigators arrived in Joplin just days after the storm, determined to understand why so many buildings failed. Led by the National Institute of Standards and Technology, the team combed through debris, documenting how even code-compliant structures had been torn apart. Their findings reshaped the nation's approach to tornado safety. Before 2011, U.S. building codes treated tornadoes as rare, unpredictable events, something too unlikely to factor into everyday design. Joplin changed that thinking. The NIST report called for tornado-resistant standards, especially for schools, hospitals, and emergency shelters. Within a decade, these recommendations became part of ASC E722, the first national standard to require tornado wind loads for high-risk buildings. By 2024, new codes in Missouri, Texas, and other tornado-prone states demanded safe rooms in all new schools and hospitals, directly inspired by what was learned in Joplin. Resilience wasn't just a matter of stronger concrete or deeper anchors. It showed in the city's response. Despite predictions that a quarter of the population would leave, nearly 9 out of 10 displaced residents stayed within 25 miles. 95% of students returned to Joplin schools. In the first 5 years, over 300 new businesses opened, and houses rose at a steady pace, 5 per week, for more than a decade. Recovery planners pointed to these numbers as proof that a community could not only survive disaster, but come back stronger. Stories of survival and adaptation echoed through Joplin's neighborhoods. One resident, who lost her home but found shelter in a neighbor's basement, later advocated for safe rooms at every public building. Her voice joined many others in pushing for stronger standards. Even the federal government took notice. FEMA's Waffle House Index, a quirky but effective way to track disaster recovery by whether local diners stayed open, became a national tool for measuring resilience, first put to the test in the streets of Joplin. Joplin's experience rippled far beyond Missouri. The tornado struck in the shadow of the 2011 super outbreak, a record-setting spring that saw 6 EF5 tornadoes across the South and Midwest. Joplin's storm was the deadliest single tornado in the U.S. since 1947, but the lessons learned there set a new standard for the nation. Today, emergency managers and engineers across Tornado Alley cite Joplin as the turning point, the moment when policy, science, and community resolve came together to change the way America prepares for its most violent storms. Today, tornado-specific building codes and warning systems exist because Joplin proved disaster isn't just a matter of chance. It's a test of what we build and how we prepare. In a world where extreme weather grows more common, every lesson paid for here matters everywhere. Thanks for watching.